Hey, true crime listeners, check out our podcast, I Said Goddamn. We're a true crime comedy podcast hosted by two besties who like to share messed up cases that make you say goddamn. Every Sunday, we try to one-up each other's story by sharing a horrific case the other has never heard of. Along the way, we splash in some wildly inappropriate jokes and colorful language. Listen every Sunday from any of your favorite podcast directories. Also, follow us on Twitter at ISGD Podcast or visit our website, isgdpodcast.com.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to solve some goddamn mysteries? This is Perhaps It's You,
an unofficial Unsolved Mysteries rewatch podcast.
I'm your cool mystery Aunt Liz.
I'm the other cool mystery Aunt Samantha.
That's not a title we made up for ourselves, so therefore it's fine. And we're here to recap and explore yet another episode of Unsolved Mysteries. What fucking episode is this?
It's episode 7.
All right. I'm going to let everyone know right now that
No, it's not. It's episode 8. God damn it.
I took very poor notes on this because I was not in a good place while watching this episode.
That's okay.
So,
I have the big mystery in it. So
fortunately, it pretty much all fell on Samantha, just the way the cookie crumbled, and it's a relief for me.
yeah, this is season 3, episode 8, and we'll get into what we think of it. But
Oof.
do you have any updates before we start?
Okay, update. Male, a version of a succubus. Can't believe we didn't think of it at the time. Incubus.
Yes.
As an incubus.
Yep.
Thank you for everyone who reminded me. That's it. No. We got a cool gift in the mail.
Mail time update.
Mail time. I wish I used to have. Did you watch Blue's Clues?
Absolutely.
I certainly didn't when I was way, way too old. I used to have the purple mailbox, like a plastic purple mailbox, and I wish we had it. We could pull out our letter for mail time.
Damn it. Well,
All right,
good thing this is an audio medium. Just imagine that's what we're doing.
No, I'm seriously looking on Ep8 later. Okay, so we need to thank Laramie and Troy, who sent us 2 little aliens, and they have the mustaches, the stingray, and the volcano.
The mustaches, these are MVMs for sure.
Yeah,
They
studied the MVMs and they put them on alien form, and we would just like to thank them for their thoughtful gift. This is really sweet.
Absolutely. And Laramie has an Etsy shop.
Yes, if you would like to get your own cryptid, barefoot cryptid on Etsy, and you can get a cool felted wool
I was browsing
Mothman or Slender Man or some sort of creature.
Yeah, there's a lot of cryptids represented. It's sometimes hard to find things like night crawlers. I'm creeped out by those, but if that's the cryptid you want for your little shelf, there's one on that.
You know how you have a cryptid shelf, which you should.
I assume all our listeners do. There was a El Chupacabra.
Oh, we need to do an episode about.
I really think
Unsolved
we should.
Mysteries about El Chupacabra?
I don't know, but I think that might be a good Patreon topic.
You know what I was trying to convince Samantha to do a Patreon on before we started this? Highly relevant to this podcast. The movie Mac and Me, which if you've never seen it, is the most low rent ripoff of E.T.
I've honestly never heard of it before until Liz brought it up, but it sounds like something that I think would make an excellent Patreon episode.
I think it really would. And we hadn't formally finalized what we were going to do this month, and I think it would be a nice, fun topic for December. I don't know if it's streaming or what, but I'll look into that after we record.
In high school, we had to do, I honestly don't remember what the project was now, but in my Spanish class in high school, we had to do like a book report style, like Spanish report on something. But I chose El Chupacabra.
Amazing.
Everyone else chose like very not weird topics.
Sure.
And then I get up in front of the class and I'm like, my topic is El Chupacabra.
That's amazing. Of course you did.
Which was everyone's favorite, if I do.
I gave
I'm remembering
a speech to my speech class about the X-Files.
Nice.
So I was pretty cool. Don't ever doubt it.
We were the coolest kids around.
Definitely. And that's why we do this podcast now. We've been preparing our whole lives, really, if you think about it.
We really have. Yeah, so thank you so much, Laramie and Troy.
Yeah, this is
Getting
super
gifts
cute.
in the mail is like the funnest thing ever.
It really is.
Like,
It's the best. It's just a constant little pat on the back that we absolutely need to keep going.
Every time something comes in the mail for us, I think that is just like the strangest way my life has gone. Like,
Yeah.
I have an Unsolved Mystery podcast. We have fans. People send us stuff.
It's like, whatever happened to that weirdo who gave
so
that
wild.
chupacabra speech? And it's like, oh, she talks about Unsolved Mysteries now and people send her aliens in the mail. And another person's like,
no one's surprised.
Figures.
Yeah.
She was so weird.
I can only imagine these conversations at my like 10-year high school reunion that I'm pretty sure is coming up.
That would be amazing, though.
Yeah.
You should go back we'll make cards, finally. You should go back and just, like, try to get more mystery solvers the whole time. Like, you won't talk about anything else.
Just constantly
You're just, like,
promoting
networking.
my podcast.
You're like, hey, I'm Samantha. Remember me? That's right. I've barely aged a day. Also...
I show up wearing this shirt.
Yeah.
Which is the mystery solver alien shirt.
You're like, also, I have a podcast now. No, not like everyone. Here's our card. It's about Unsolved Mysteries. If you have a paranormal story, you should totally write in. We're so popular.
I can imagine those kind of... Like, Serial? A podcast? I've heard of podcasts.
I've heard of podcasts. So it's hosted by NPR, and you're like, yeah, and then you just walk away. Sure is. We're number 1 in iTunes. Liz says that sometimes. It must be true. She wouldn't lie to us.
Don't look it up, though.
Don't look it up, ever.
Yeah, I thought I had another update, but I don't honestly remember.
I feel like throughout the week, I think of so many things, but I am a dumbass and I don't write them down. And then when we actually sit down and record, I'm like, bleh?
Yeah, I don't really have anything. You know what? I want to mention, thank you for the positive feedback on our latest Patreon episode. We watched Haunted.
Yes, that's now available. If you cough up $1, you can listen to that.
Yeah, that weird Netflix show.
Of reenactments of sort of ghost stories, sort of not.
Neither of the ones we talked about were actual ghost stories. So
They only had to come up with 6, and yet they failed.
So yeah,
so
for
that's
$1 a month, you can get that.
You can go to a fountain, reach in, scoop out the change, send that to us.
Yeah, you can send it in a plastic bag. I don't know how we would get you the Patreon episode, but we'll figure it out.
Did I totally want to do that in middle school so I could buy a nail polish? Yes. And now you can do it to listen to podcasts.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah. Unless they're giving that money to charity, I guess. If it just goes to the mall, I'll take it.
Yeah.
They don't need it.
They don't need
your dirty pennies that you threw in there. Okay, we're already slightly off the rails.
As usual.
As usual. So should we talk about this or just no?
I think...
Just like freewheel it.
I mean, that's what we do every week.
So at
the beginning of this episode, we get a New Kids on the Block update.
We get a totally unnecessary update, which irritates me more and more as time goes by.
It's really, calling it an update is generous. It's the entire segment again.
Yeah, and with no additional information.
No.
But I guess you get to see the New Kids on the Block again. So if you're horny for them, like, kudos. But for the rest of us, boring. Yeah. We don't need that at all. It's just a waste of time. Just make the episode shorter. Like, I realize they're trying to, like, fluff them out to an hour or whatever, but quit wasting all of our time. Robert Stack, if he was alive, he would not approve of this.
I don't think so.
I get to say what he would want, and no. He wouldn't want this.
You speak for the dead, Robert Stack.
Yes, I do. Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies to the Stack family and his estate. I do not. Okay. Don't sue me.
I'm glad we put that legal disclaimer
Don't
in here.
sue
Perhaps
me.
since you does not speak for the Robert Stack estate.
Do not come and take Lenny and Curtis and
Someone's already taken Curtis and replaced him with some dog I've never seen before.
Yeah, Curtis got a haircut and is now fucking unrecognizable. They could have just brought him out and I would have been like, I'm sorry, I'm here for my dog. Where I didn't pick him up, so this didn't happen. But no, I dropped off a totally different dog. Could you go get that one, please?
I walked into Liz's house today. I couldn't believe it.
He looks like he's lost 50 pounds, which is weird because he only weighed like 10 to begin with.
Right.
But he's like half the size. And turns out he has like really long legs. Good for him.
Good for Curtis.
His tail is curlier than you thought it was.
I know. I didn't realize how much it like also came like curled backwards.
It's like a little pig.
So cute. He's really adorable.
He looks like a puppy.
Yeah.
Instead of a shag muff.
Anyway, we eventually do need to talk about this episode.
Though?
We've committed.
You're right. You have to talk about late great hero Amelia Earhart.
That's right. So this is... They call this a mysterious legend, which...
Is it?
Why are we putting Amelia Earhart in the same category as Bigfoot? I don't understand.
As a kid, I thought Amelia Earhart was so cool.
I still do. But yeah, I definitely did as a kid.
Okay, yes. But
she was like the coolest.
I can't say that I've really given her much thought.
Well, that's true.
Recently, until watching this and getting quite angry.
Yeah.
Because, well, you'll see.
All right, 6 decades ago, at the time that this aired, Amelia Earhart was one of the most famous women in the world. Robert Stack says she had the figure of a movie star and the face of an angelic tomboy.
Okay. That's a weird way of saying she had short hair.
Yeah. More importantly than her looks, she was the first woman to pilot an airplane across the Atlantic.
Oh, huh.
Yeah.
That's weird that we haven't talked about... Well, I guess we have talked about a lot of butts. But I was going to say, it's weird that we haven't talked about how every single man who's coming up in these mysteries looked.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about the butts, but...
Yeah, Robert Stack fails to mention them. He's never telling us...
How dare he?
How Mothman's booty looked. Why not?
We haven't seen the Mothman segment, Liz, yet. We don't know.
I feel like we would have heard by now if Robert Stack specifically mentioned, and he had a really tight rear end.
That's how he'd put it, too.
What if he's like, Mothman, he had the figure of a movie star and the face of an angelic tomboy? I'm just going to apply that description to, like, everyone now. Son of Sam, he had the figure of a movie star and the face of an angelic tomboy. Bigfoot.
We know Bigfoot had that booty.
Just according to that one sketch, Samantha, I do not accept that sketch as fact.
I'm picturing Robert Stack in his very serious way, just being like, Mothman never skips leg day.
Well, clearly not. I'm not even convinced Mothman has legs, despite that statue.
Yeah, he was supposed
to be a giant moth, not really half moth, half man.
Well, why do they call him Mothman then?
Because he's as big as a man. He's a giant moth with glowing red eyes.
That's a fair point.
And a sort of a mysterious, dark figure. I'm not sure anyone said he had buff calves. I don't recall that in the
perfectly round, just pert booty.
No one mentioned that in the terrifying Point Pleasant documentary.
Okay, they were running from him. It doesn't necessarily mean he didn't have that. They never saw him from behind. All right. Love Mothman. I want to say someone in our Facebook group is claiming that they are going to write a Mothman romance. Not sure if it's actually going to happen, but I need it to.
That, if it does happen, the day that I learned that is the best day of my life. Yeah. Nothing would make me
20 copies.
Happier. I insist that it's dedicated to Samantha.
I told Liz that I saw that post in our Facebook group, and she told me that I should insist that it be dedicated to me. Like, I don't think I can insist that someone dedicate their book to me, but
you inspired it.
I guess I did.
This is now when you go to your high school reunion and you're like, hey, I'm a super famous podcaster. That's right, my skin looks ageless. Did you know that I inspired a Mothman romance novel?
It's gonna be my legacy.
Yeah, you can get me a drink, and like no one asked. I'd love a drink, thank you.
It's like Liz can see the future.
Also, skin gold comes out of my very pores. That's how you should show up at your high school reunion, with gold leaf.
I'm just picturing myself getting thrown out. Like, we're gonna have to ask you to leave.
Can you think of something to be prouder of than getting booted from your high school reunion? That sounds so punk rock.
It's true.
It's like, Samantha, we had to kick her out. I would be so impressed. Okay, listeners, if Samantha can get herself kicked out of her own high school reunion, tell me you would be impressed. Yes? Yes.
I assume they said yes. All right, so Robert Stack further describes Amelia Earhart as part all-American girl, part daredevil, and the, quote, perfect hero for her time.
But how were her lashes? Were they long and luscious? Let's focus on her appearance more.
Perfect. So she was also an outspoken advocate for women's rights. We see a video footage of her speaking in which she says that in her field, a pilot is a pilot, and that her hope is that women will be able to achieve the same level of equality in all fields.
Good luck with that, Amelia.
So on May 20th, 1937, Amelia and her navigator Fred Noonan prepared to take off. She was 39 years old and attempting to become the first person to fly around the world at the equator, which is the widest part of the globe. Robert Stack says that today...
It is! Sorry.
Listen... the world isn't flat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is when I come out to Samantha as a flat earth truther. No, what you don't understand is that there's an ice wall around the edge, and that's what we think are the poles. People really think... I think some people watched Game of Thrones, and they were like, oh, the wall. Like, they think that's real.
That's like north and south. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Or, like, don't some people think that there's, like, a dome?
Probably, because they probably watched that show, The Dome.
Oh, yeah.
And then they went, oh, this was a documentary. And it's like, no, it was a book by Stephen King. And then they went, we live in a dome. Where do we live? That's right, a dome.
All right, so Robert Stack says that today, 53 years later, new evidence has deepened the mystery surrounding Amelia Earhart's last flight.
I'm just preparing to be so angry as this goes on, so continue.
So Amelia and Fred made it almost the entire way. They flew 2/3 of the journey fairly quickly, according to an author named Fred Gorner.
Wait, he's just invested in this because his name's also Fred.
I know.
He's biased.
From here on out, I'm going to call him Author Fred so we don't get him confused with her navigator, Fred Noonan.
Okay, but how did the navigator Fred look? Did he have...
I don't know that we even saw a picture of him in the segment.
Does he have a clear complexion? Does he have a strong jaw? Like,
Does he have a mustache?
Yeah, like we're focusing so much on Amelia Earhart's figure that I'd like to know about Fred. Was he dreamy? Was he kind of like, eh?
Let's assume that he was dreamy.
Okay.
Why not?
And that actually they were making out and that's why...
They crashed?
Yeah, that's my new theory.
It would make as much sense as anything else that this episode puts forward.
Actually, yeah, believe it or not, my theory is way more sensitive to The Departed than what is put forth in this episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Oh, they were too busy banging, and that's why the plane crashed.
So this guy is an author who has supposedly studied Amelia Earhart. I do not think he's her biographer, so don't think that he has some, like, swell credentials.
I would never think that, considering.
So anyway, he says that they must have been very tired. They had 2 days...
From making out. Go on.
Obviously. In New Guinea to rest up, but they were about to face the most grueling part of their flight, which was an 18-hour trip from New Guinea to a tiny island called Howland Island. It's a very small target, only 1.5 miles long and half a mile wide, and it's basically at sea level. So this was a very difficult flight. In fact, he said that if there was a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most difficult flight, this would be a 10. It would be the hardest flight you would have to do. High seas delayed their takeoff from New Guinea. They were planning on getting back, finishing the flight on, I think it's the 4th of July, and they ended up not leaving until July 2nd. So they were going to be late. But another researcher explains that Fred Noonan was the best navigator in the world, but he was only responsible for navigating, and then he lists all of the many things that Amelia had to do to fly the airplane, all while operating the radio. This is where Liz is going to start getting mad. Because this is where Fred, the author, comes back to say that Amelia was not competent with the radio. He claims that she never took the time to learn it and that it was her Achilles heel.
I just fucking refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that this accomplished pilot couldn't be bothered to learn how to properly use a radio, which would save her life.
I don't understand. And
where is the evidence of this?
I Googled Amelia Earhart radio, and not that that's in-depth research, but I didn't see anything that blamed her crash on not being able to use the radio. Granted, we know a little bit more, and I'll get into that later, about what happened to her now, but I saw this, and without looking anything up or what, I was just like, no. I fucking refuse to believe that, and I just don't think that you would come to that same conclusion about a man. I just don't. No, of course not.
It's like, oh, she didn't know how to do a basic thing required for this flight.
Yeah,
that was her Achilles heel, that she was so dumb.
There's other holes in that theory that we'll get into in a second. So this was a time before radar, so all Amelia had on her flight to connect her to the world was a battery-powered radio. Near Howland Island, the Coast Guard ship Itasca was waiting to make radio contact with her as soon as she came within range. The ship was prepared to rescue Amelia and Fred should anything go wrong. So basically, it's because they were in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere. This Coast Guard ship was out there to help them navigate to Howland Island. Mm-hmm. 17 and a half hours into the flight, Amelia radioed the Itasca, asking them to get a radio bearing on her position. What happens, according to Fred, the author, is that she whistles into the radio. This is according to his theory. She whistled because she mistakenly thought that she had to. In reality, she just needed to open the radio signal to the Itasca for 30 seconds.
Why would she think that?
I don't know. And it's possible that I don't know anything about flying at this time period. Maybe that's something other people did. Don't really know.
She was such a dummy that she thought radios turned on by whistling. She was incorrect. Like, what?
It seems like other things went around. I don't know. This Fred guy really thinks that she just didn't know how to use the radio, and that's why she got lost.
I hate him.
So basically, the other thing is that we don't know why she broke off contact with the Itasca too soon for them to get a bearing on her position. I don't think it's known why she did that. I think Fred is assuming she just didn't know how radios worked, but...
Maybe the radio stopped working. This is a fucking battery-operated radio.
Right.
We're acting like that's an infallible piece of equipment. Maybe they just didn't get her signal.
You know, maybe her uterus was broken. Who knows?
Maybe she was so busy looking in a mirror because, you know, ladies, that and whistling, because she like saw herself and she was like, hubba hubba, and she whistled, and then was so distracted by her own appearance.
Oh, yeah.
That she cut off communication.
Well, she is a woman, so
And then got her period.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
So basically, Fred and Amelia get off course. They can't see Howland Island, and according to Fred, the author, all Amelia would have had to do was open a radio transmission to the Itasca, but for some reason, he thinks that she was reluctant to let the radio just start transmitting, because on a previous flight the last year, she had overused the radio and drained the battery. So basically, this is why it's very confusing. They are saying that she both didn't use the radio because she didn't know how, and that she didn't use the radio because she knew how but was afraid to drain the battery.
Well, she did it wrong before because she was so stupid, and she didn't want to be so stupid again, so she was extra stupid. I think is how
kind of what he's saying.
Also, she doesn't have other batteries. Like, she didn't want to drain the battery, and no more could ever be found. I feel like the plan of stopping on this island just seems flawed.
Yeah, and I don't know why they stopped there. I don't know if it's because they had
There's
to.
nowhere else to go.
I'm assuming that's the case. And I don't understand this theory. Like, at risk of spending too much time on this, I don't know why he's saying, well, she only had to open the radio line for 30 seconds and then it all would have been fine because the Itasca could reach them. Oh, but she was afraid to open up the line for 30 seconds because she didn't want to drain the battery. Like, which is it?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
I mean, I don't think this guy is correct on either way.
No. So the last transmission the Itasca heard was Amelia, frantic, saying that she was switching to a frequency that the Itasca knew they couldn't reach her at. At this point in the show, it is asserted that she was unfamiliar with emergency procedures, which does not seem like it could possibly be correct.
No one talked to her about that before this historic flight. Like, they're willing to put a boat in the middle of the ocean just to help her navigate, but they're not going to tell her what to do in an emergency.
Guess not. Or I just think if she was flying across the ocean, she would take it. I mean, you would think she would take it upon herself to understand.
What is Fred doing right now? She's like, well,
he's a man, so it can't be.
I'm only the navigator. I shouldn't tell her, oh, hey, how about switching to that other line? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
He's just there, not interfering, falling to his death.
I guess.
Because he's only the navigator.
I guess.
He's also not familiar with emergency procedure, despite being on this historic flight.
Yeah. So the generally accepted theory of what happened is that they ran out of fuel and ditched the plane in the ocean. A 16-day search around Howland Island, never found the plane. So experts believe that Amelia and Fred went down in the waters around Howland Island, but incredibly, unconfirmed sightings have placed Amelia... What was that?
It was the table.
Wow.
It got caught on my blankets.
That reverb. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So this is what Robert Stack says. Incredibly, unconfirmed sightings have placed Amelia at a different island northwest of Howland Island called Saipan.
No.
This is where we go off the rails.
No, none of this happened, and it makes me angry, and...
So I'm sorry I even have to go into this, but this
I can't
is what
even
the mystery
articulate
is.
why this bothers me so much.
So far, they're just giving you the background of what's generally accepted about what happened to Amelia Earhart, and now we're getting into the new evidence. So, at the time of Amelia's flight, Saipan was an important military base for Japan. 7 years later, where we pick up the story, Saipan had been taken over by American forces. That's the history. This Thomas Devine describes an incident in which him and another soldier that are stationed on Saipan are stopped by a group of Marines and kept out of a heavily guarded airplane hangar. They overhear two Marines nearby saying that they have Amelia Earhart's plane, and then a man in civilian clothes storms over and yells at everybody to stop talking.
I just
Because
don't believe any of this.
this is a classified project, and he just goes off. Well, none of it's true. We'll get into why later, but
Stealing Amelia Earhart's plane and keeping it from the public is a classified project that we don't know why we took on. What purpose does it serve?
none of this makes any sense. The next day, Thomas saw a civilian plane flying low above the island. He wrote down the ID numbers on the plane, and it is exactly the same as Amelia Earhart's plane. This is proof, everyone. So
Yep.
later that night, he
Numbers.
again saw the plane. But this time, Liz, it was in flames. They were burning it.
I was texting Samantha as we was watching this, like, and now they're burning the plane for some reason.
Why would you burn Amelia Earhart's plane?
Because the other people knew too much. They overheard the conversation.
But who cares?
I don't
Would you
know.
tell everybody if you found Amelia Earhart's plane?
I don't know. For some reason, they wanted to keep it secret on a hangar in Saipan.
I don't know why this would be a secret.
The government needed the plane for secret reasons.
I really think
For
that's
secret research.
I really think that's the hypothesis here, is that, well, governments are shady.
Yeah,
Shrug.
They are.
So of course they
but
would.
there is like a purpose to the things that they do. They don't just do things to act mysteriously. Do they like hide information and stuff? Absolutely. Would they just keep Amelia Earhart's plane in a hangar on an island and then burn it after flying it one time? Why? What? They're acting like this is a UFO or something, and it's
Yeah.
fucking just a plane. It just happened to be flown by Amelia Earhart.
It's also one of the biggest mysteries in American history. Is what happened to Amelia
They would
Earhart.
fucking go put that in the Smithsonian and charge people to see it or something.
Yeah, they wouldn't just burn it. So next we meet a Marine who describes having nothing. Liz is just sighing with her head in her hands.
Literally rubbing my forehead because I can feel a tension headache coming.
This Marine describes having nothing to do during the day when they were stationed on Saipan, so they just wandered around looking for souvenirs.
They were just looting stuff, which he seemed to act like that was... You know what I did when I was in the armed forces? I just stole things.
Yeah, this is not an uninhabited island either.
Thank you for
This
your
is like-
service.
He tells the story of finding a safe in a building on the island, and him and his buddies decide to blow the door off with a stick of dynamite.
This is actually probably really... This part of the story, I believe.
So-
We just wandered around the island stealing stuff and blowing stuff up because we didn't have anything to do.
He claims to have found a briefcase in the safe that was full of Amelia Earhart's papers.
Yep, they just they locked it up in a safe, but then they left that safe completely unattended and didn't care if people blew it up to access it.
He turned the briefcase over to his commanding officer, never to see it again. Anyway, another Amelia Earhart author...
Yeah, I bet they put it in the plane before they burned it.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
They used it as kindling.
It was paper after all. So this author is named Buddy and says that he found a woman in Saipan who witnessed Amelia Earhart's death. Unsolved Mysteries goes to Saipan, finds the woman, and records an interview with her. This is what she said happened.
I can't explain why this woman is saying these things, but...
It wasn't Amelia Earhart, but... A woman and a man, this is her testimony, were brought ashore by the Japanese soldiers. The Japanese soldiers said that they had captured 2 spies. Many of the islanders went into the town to see them. They made the man and the woman strip off all their clothes.
Sure. Okay. If you've ever wanted to see a reenactment of a naked Amelia Earhart, if that's your kink, good news. This Unsolved Mysteries is made for you.
I will say you don't get to see much. but-
No, you'll have to use your imagination, but perhaps just a suggestion of it is enough for you.
Sure. My notes at this point kind of start going downhill. I wrote, she doesn't eat her rice.
Yeah, they kill her for that.
They put her...
They kind of make it seem they don't kill her for the spying, that they kill her for not eating her rice.
They put her in a motorcycle. They shoot her in the field. So in 19... Yeah, so this woman claims that she
Well,
saw them execute
what
her.
evidence is there that was Amelia Earhart and not a spy?
There's none. So this is what happened. In 1988, Buddy goes to Saipan and gets permission to dig where the woman said the grave was. And they did find a remnant of a blindfold. The woman said that the woman she saw them execute...
but it's just a piece of cloth, really.
Yeah, they found no human remains. So this woman might not be lying. She may have seen Japanese soldiers kill someone.
But
It was not
why
Amelia Earhart.
would that be Amelia Earhart?
Well, it wasn't,
just because it was a woman?
I guess.
Do you know how many women there have been in history? Nope. Just okay, let's think of the only women there have been. Joan of Arc, Queen Elizabeth,
That's it, right?
Amelia Earhart, and Rosa Parks.
No one else.
I think that's pretty much it.
That's about it. All right, so here is what a lot. There's another guy who seems a little more level-headed.
So I'm highly amused at the idea that there's only been 4 women ever. That was it.
In all of history.
In all of history. The only ones you ever learn about in school. That's why Amelia Earhart seemed cool. Is because you don't really learn about any women in school.
It's really true. Yeah.
Like, maybe Harriet Tubman.
Yep.
And women have done cool shit. You just never hear about it.
Right.
So,
Flying an airplane across the Atlantic is cool as fuck.
Yeah. It was like controversial she wore pants.
Right. So.
And then you hear about that and you're wearing pants and you're like, wow, what a pioneer. Good job. Good job, Amelia Earhart.
So another author who seems a little more level-headed, although I don't know where he gets this information from, says that Amelia and Fred ran into 3 problems. 1, the United States nautical charts that Fred was using to navigate had mislocated Howland Island by 6 miles.
That's pretty bad.
Oh, but she didn't know how to use radio, Liz. That's why she crashed.
They're looking for a tiny island that's the only place they can stop in the whole ocean. That's only like 1.5 miles wide and is 6 miles off on the chart. That's terrible.
There was also a faulty compass on their aircraft.
That's also terrible.
According to him, I don't know how they know this, but according to him, there's a faulty compass, which took them 7 additional miles off course.
Not good.
And then he speculates, or someone speculates, that wind drifts pushed them an additional 22 miles west.
I'm starting to think Fred wasn't a very good navigator, you guys.
Possibly.
I mean, he was so handsome, don't get me wrong. He was dreamy. But how was his navigation skills, really?
We should ask these questions. So, if this is true, these combined factors would have taken them 35 miles off course.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
However, that's also not true. Because So,
also, Amelia Earhart went to Radio Shack and said, I don't want to learn how to use any of these radios, but I need one to fly around the whole world. And they gave her one, but the batteries were like kind of already half. It was like a display model.
Yeah.
So the batteries were like half dead. And she used that one, but she didn't want to learn how to use it. And
typical woman.
yeah.
Okay, so
if there's one thing I hate, it's radios.
Okay, so a lot of Amelia Earhart news has come out this year.
That's true.
We basically know what happened to her. So even this last theory is, it may be right that they had these problems, but what he said and what they show in Unsolved Mysteries is this map of them missing Howland Island by 35 miles to the west. Her bones, in all likelihood, were discovered in an island south, a little bit southeast of Howland Island. So do you know the story?
Not really.
Okay. So this just came out this year.
Yeah.
It's not a new discovery, but basically they took a fresh look at an old discovery and basically said that
They went,
that we know what happened to Amelia Earhart. So Amelia Earhart, this is the title of the article from BBC News. I thought I put the date that this was published on, but it was this year. Bones discovered on a Pacific island in 1940 are likely to be those of famed pilot Amelia Earhart, according to a U.S. peer-reviewed science journal. Earhart, her plane, and her navigator vanished without a trace in 1937.
I like that he didn't even get a name. Poor Fred.
Poor Fred. So, a new study published in Forensic Anthropology claims these bones prove she died as an island castaway. The report claims that they are a 99% match, which contradicts an earlier conclusion about the bones. The study, titled Amelia Earhart and the, I'm going to get this wrong, Nikumaru Bones, was first published by the University of Florida and conducted by Professor Richard Jantz from the University of Tennessee. It disputes that the remains found on the eastern Pacific island of Nikuraru, about 1,800 miles southwest of Hawaii, belonged to a man, as the researcher had determined in 1941.
Boo.
Earhart was known to have been near the island when she vanished during her doomed attempt to fly across the globe. A British party exploring the island for habitation in 1940 found a human skull, a woman's shoe, a Navy tool used by her navigator, and a bottle of herbal liquor, which was something that Earhart was known to carry.
Oh.
There was suspicion at the time that the bones could be the remains of Amelia Earhart. The party found a total of 13 bones, which were then sent to Fiji to be analyzed by Dr. Hoodless, who concluded that they had belonged to a male. However, Dr. Jantz argues that because forensic osteology, the study of bones, was still in its early stages at the time, Dr. Hoodless probably reached the wrong conclusion.
Why did he think it was a man?
Because Amelia Earhart was taller than most women, I think is why. And they just...
Because of her movie star figure?
Yes.
It actually turned out to be relevant?
I didn't read the study. I just read these articles, so they didn't go into details about why he came to that conclusion. But basically, the study of bones was not advanced. It was just in its infancy. And so they went off measurements.
He didn't really know what he was talking about.
Yeah, and they were bones that probably were closer in resemblance to male bones because she was a taller than average woman. Anyway, so they consulted Dr. Hoodleth's measurements of the bones. They used a modern computer program now widely used by forensic anthropologists to compare them to Earhart's height and body stature. The bones have unfortunately been lost, so they can't be analyzed. I know.
Oh, no.
But the research team used historical photographs as well as her pilot's and driver's licenses to determine that her body proportions matched the skeletal remains. Also, this was my favorite part, a historical seamstress was brought in and consulted to analyze her clothing, including the inseam length and the waist circumference of her trousers. This analysis reveals that Earhart is more similar to these bones than 99% of individuals in a large reference sample. So basically, they said that this strongly supports the conclusion that these bones belong to Amelia Earhart until definitive evidence is presented that the remains are not those of Amelia Earhart. The most convincing argument is that they are hers. So,
do you want some herbal liqueur right now to celebrate?
Maybe. There was another thing I wanted to bring up. There were these distress calls that were heard around the time of her crash coming from this island that for many years were dismissed as either hoaxes or misunderstandings.
So not only was she alive, but she was using a radio.
Yes. This is why I wanted to talk about this, because there's this group of people that call themselves the Earhart Project, and on their website they say that they are testing the hypothesis that Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan landed and eventually died on what was then Gardner Island, but is now Nikumaru. I'm sorry, I keep pronouncing that wrong, I'm sure. So I found an article, this was also on BBC News, I think, and it was published in July of this year, that talks about whether or not these radio signals may have come from Amelia. It says that Amelia Earhart may have sent distress calls from the tiny Pacific island by the light of the moon, talking urgently into her radio while she recharged her damaged plane at low tide, according to a new report. The news report published online by the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, which is they go by Tiger, on July 24th, which would have been Earhart's 121st birthday, focuses on radio distress calls attributed to Earhart after she and her navigator friend Noonan went missing in the Central Pacific on July 2nd, 1937. Historians have known about these distress calls for years, and many have been dismissed as either hoaxes or misunderstandings. Recently, Tiger went through the calls and found that 57 of the 120 messages reportedly heard by the public seem credible. A new analysis of these credible calls made from July 2nd to July 7th reveals that they happened in clusters during the nighttime hours.
Wow.
So the new report proposes a possible explanation. Perhaps Earhart got lost on her historic attempt to fly around the world and landed her plane onto a coral reef near Gardner Island, which is now known as, I'm not going to say it again. The study's co-author, Richard Gillespie, executive director of Tiger, says that according to the distress calls, Noonan was injured in the landing, but Earhart escaped relatively unharmed, except for an injured ankle. Gillespie said that during the day, the plane was in a precarious location stuck in the reef where the tide was high. The weather was hot, and hungry blacktip sharks were nearby.
Oh my God.
So it's possible that Earhart went ashore during the day to seek food and shelter and to escape the high tide, heat, and sharks, and then returned at night. At this time, Earhart would have had enough fuel to run the plane's engine and use the craft's propeller to recharge the batteries so that she could send out distress calls via her radio.
That she didn't know how to use, yet she figured out how to do this. Got it.
Right.
Cool.
This is what Tiger calls the active periods. This was always at night. But if she's parked stationary in a tropical environment, the typical air-cooled engine would overheat. So when the engine got too hot, Earhart would have needed to shut it off to allow it to cool for 60 to 90 minutes, which would explain the silent periods between distress call clusters.
Oh, this makes me so sad.
So it's not for sure. As far as I could tell, people aren't totally sold that this is how it went down. It seems likely, given that these bones found on the same island probably belong to Amelia, it seems likely that she was sending distress calls from the island.
Poor Amelia.
However, there are a few problems that this article points out with this study. The first is that a lot of people say that if you're going to be landing on a reef, you're not going to put your wheels down. Apparently, either the distress calls or something suggested that they had landed with their wheels down, which is contrary to what you would do if you were ditching your plane in the ocean, because the wheels could catch either on the water or on the reef and make you go head over heels. They also wonder how she could be running the propeller, because it would hit the water and it wouldn't work. People don't really know. This study was also not peer reviewed, so they just self-published it online. For whatever that's worth. Some people are casting doubt on it. People also think that the coral would be too sharp for her to go back and forth between the plane and the land. I don't know. But I think it's interesting that
if those are her bones on the island, that would suggest there was a period of time after the crash where she was still alive, right?
Right.
But she wasn't found in the plane.
Exactly. It was found on the island. The other thing is that people recorded these distress calls. There were primarily civilians who operated ham radios for fun. And for hobbies, and then various other people recorded these distress calls. Different individual people recorded these calls. I think you might even be able to hear some on YouTube. I'm not totally sure. So it seems extremely unlikely that all these people were hoaxing or making it up or being confused. Also, they came from the same island that her bones were found on. So the theory to me seems plausible.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the moral of that story is that she did know how to use a radio, and these people they don't know what they're talking about.
That's right, everyone. Samantha has solved the mystery of Amelia Earhart. You're welcome. This is one of the worst segments of Unsolved Mysteries we've seen yet. It did a total disservice to her memory and the story, and
it's also extremely racist. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
the whole Japanese thing was ridiculous.
It was like, well, obviously we should be suspicious of them. I was like, what? Why? What do they care about Amelia Earhart? What?
Yeah. And the weirdest part too is just at the beginning of the segment, they propose a perfectly logical explanation that most experts agree happened, which is they crashed near the island they were trying to get to, but they couldn't find for whatever reason. Their compass malfunctioned. Who knows? But then they go off into left field and say, well, these people think they saw her miles away in this other, like...
They are trying to make it more mysterious, and it's already plenty mysterious. And I think they didn't talk enough about what an accomplishment this was.
Yeah.
For some reason, we hear about her appearance. And then, we go into this eyewitness account of people being murdered. That there's no reason to think that is Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan.
Yeah.
So I just think it's irresponsible.
I also wonder, and I guess maybe at this point, these bones that were found in the 1940s were completely dismissed. Like, if they're trying to talk about the mystery around Amelia Earhart, why didn't they bring up these bones, which at the time people thought could be Amelia Earhart? Yeah, and I guess they just believed the science that said that they were from a man, but why even bring up this whole Saipan thing? Who knows? I guess just because they could talk to this dude about his looting days. I guess. I don't know. It's very extremely... Can you tell? It's irritating. Can you tell I didn't enjoy it, everyone? The truth about Amelia Earhart is way more fascinating than this bullshit. No, they did such a bad job. Her being a castaway on an islet, going back and forth. I want to see that movie where she's going back and forth from the plane. When there's sharks. It's so dramatic. Yeah. Recharging her batteries at night on her... So we already know how it's going to end. I know. That's the bad part, is that she dies at the end. So sorry, Amelia. Yeah. It's also so unfortunate. It's like if she was sending out distress calls and people were picking them up at the time. They picked them up between July 2nd and July 7th. I hate that. So if we are to believe that she died after July 7th, that was... They could have gone and rescued her. That was several days when they could have gone to that island and saved her. So, and it sounds like she wasn't even injured other than an ankle injury. Yeah, she probably just couldn't find enough food and supplies, and... apparently got really hot during the day. Yeah, so she was not prepared for it. Oh my god, it's awful. I know. And she had, I guess, on the plane, they mentioned in the show, they had enough supplies to live for 2 or 3 days. Yeah. So I think just that ran out eventually. Easily could have been rescued. Yeah. If only she knew how to use a radio. Maybe the reason I was like, there's no way this is true, is that we have this podcast equipment sitting right here that we don't even know how to use. And somehow we produce a podcast. Still we make a podcast. So I just fucking refused immediately. No, that's not it. It's just ridiculous. The radio is such an integral part of her job as a pilot, and she was the most successful female pilot, one of the most successful pilots of the time ever.
Yeah.
So to say that she just didn't know how to do a critical part of that job is ridiculous. Seems sexist on its face.
Yeah. He was just like, you know who was a bad pilot? Amelia Earhart. And I was like, wait, what? Because, yeah, using the radio is a pretty important part of that whole thing.
Uh-huh.
You know who I'm super fascinated by, though, is Howard Hughes. Also, famous pilot.
You've mentioned this before on the podcast, I think.
Another time I should bring that up as a recommendation. I've been to his grave.
Ooh.
In Houston. He was a horrible person. Horrible person. Basically a murderer, indirectly, but just fascinating. But also, yeah, he did a lot of historic flight things. Am I just procrastinating on talking about my mystery?
I don't even remember what your mystery was.
It's the most terrifying one I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I do know.
This is a wanted case. Strong trigger warning for watching this segment and possibly even us talking about it. If you have any experience with partner abuse, domestic abuse, even just like a really controlling partner
this
or ex,
could be difficult for you to hear about.
Because I found this upsetting, and I feel like I have been lucky in that regard, and I still did not enjoy watching this.
Agreed.
Because it honestly might be the scariest reenactment we've seen yet. This is the case of Rick Church, who was wanted at the time for the murder of Ray and Ruth Ann Ritter in Woodstock, Illinois. Rick dated their daughter, Colleen. He was a family friend. Like, his family and her family had known each other forever. They went to the same church, blah, blah, blah. Rick and Colleen started dating in high school when she was a sophomore and he was a senior. And they had dated for a year or so, but he went off to college at Northern University in DeKalb. And, that just doesn't usually work.
Right.
She's still in high school.
She's a tale as old as time.
Yeah, she's still doing high school stuff. He's far away. He was calling her every night. And in the reenactment, she's like, yeah, but you never say anything. And I don't know. They just had less in common and blah, blah, blah. So he comes back for a break. He finds out that his parents who have been together for 25 years are getting divorced. And then Colleen breaks up with him.
Which, I mean,
that's rough.
Those are shitty things to have happen to you.
That is a rough break.
But, I mean, who hasn't been there?
Rick proceeds to try to murder her and her entire family.
Oh, well, it's not the right way to handle that.
No, that is an extreme reaction. An extreme, unnecessary reaction. One of my many thoughts watching this segment was that this is proof that sexuality is not a choice. No woman watched this and then went, I choose to keep dating men.
Such a good point.
That's a really rational thing to do.
Yeah.
I feel totally safe around men. Mm-hmm. I feel safe rejecting them. I feel safe when things just naturally don't work out.
Yep. I don't even have something funny to say about that because it's just fucking true.
Why would anyone date a man after watching this? It's straight up terrifying. Uh-huh. Terrifying. Okay, so we get a reenactment. We hear from Colleen talking about how they met, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Because he's so terrible. Like, I don't want to hear about
how he was a good athlete and a good student.
No.
And all blah.
This guy is bottom feeder, trash, garbage human. I don't want to hear about the good days and whatever. Like, I don't know. Colleen talks about dumping him and how she wanted them to remain friends, and I was like,
she was so nice about the breakup too.
She was so yeah.
She seemed extremely mature, and honestly, even her talking about it in the Unsolved Mysteries segment, I was like, you are so composed.
She really, and considering her parents are dead, she really, had great composure of herself and was talking about this, pretty calmly. And
so I can imagine she handled this breakup in a very mature way.
Yeah, she seemed like a very mature person.
Considering she was in high school. I wasn't that mature in high school.
I'm not that mature now. I'm not that mature talking about this guy. I never met him, and he certainly didn't kill my parents.
Right.
So the way that it unfolds, they're according to the reenactment, sitting in their truck, and she's like, look, this just isn't working. I think it's time for us to see other people. He's very mad, and he storms off. Later that night, or I don't know, maybe a couple nights later.
I don't remember the timeline.
Yeah, she's at her house. She has a friend over. Her younger brother, who is 11, also has a friend over. Their parents are out. They're at an Irish fest partying with their friends. And he calls, and she's like, I'm busy. Like, I don't have time to... She's already dumped his ass, right? She's like, I don't really have time to talk to you right now. I'm busy doing stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Good for her.
She doesn't sound like she was mean about it. She was just like, I don't have time to talk.
Yeah.
He gets mad and hangs up. She doesn't really think about anything of it because he gets mad and hangs up sometimes. And also, she dumped him, right?
Sure.
So the friends are sleeping over. They eventually go to bed. The parents go to bed. Then we get this reenactment in the pitch black house. So everything is like deep blue.
Ugh, this is so horrible.
Of Rick coming into the house, murdering her parents while they sleep.
In a gruesome reenactment. That's like done in slow motion with a lot of close-up shots of the knife.
Like horror movie level stuff.
It really is.
So he murders them as they sleep. He goes and he stabs her brother numerous times, and then comes after Colleen. She at one point pretends to be dead, hoping that he'll stop. That doesn't work. She tells him that she loves him, hoping that he'll stop. That doesn't work. She eventually, despite being stabbed, by the end of it, 20 times, many to the back of the head, she manages to run out into the street, which they show in the reenactment. She's just like wearing a nightshirt and shrieking. It's awful.
Yep.
And at this point, neighbors hear the commotion. They come outside. Rick runs away.
Yep, so in the reenactment they show her collapsing in the street, and then her neighbor screams because he sees Rick chasing her with a knife.
Yeah.
And then he runs off.
Colleen had called 911 before Rick started attacking her, but I don't think she was able to give the operator any information. While she's out on the street, her brother, despite being stabbed multiple times and only being 11, calls back and is able to give the dispatcher their address. And the police arrive very quickly. They think that maybe Rick has gone back into the house. So they go inside to search the house, and they find Colleen's parents dead.
Ugh.
Rick has actually gone to his home, has packed up his shit, and left in that period of time of them searching the house. So when this airs...
He's still on the run.
He's on the run. So that's why I'm saying this is the scariest thing. Can you imagine watching this, which is essentially a horror movie, and then them being like, this guy's out there. In fact, he could be behind you right now.
It's so scary.
This isn't like Freddy versus Jason, where you gotta go like, oh, well, yeah, that was...
This man is unhinged.
Yeah. And was literally on the run for 3 years.
Ugh.
He was featured on America's Most Wanted 5 times before they caught him.
Wow.
Which meant that Colleen had to go on with her life.
Just knowing he was out there.
Just knowing he was out there, having murdered her parents.
And probably still wants to murder her.
Yeah. Clearly didn't take the breakup well. No reason to think he's suddenly like matured into a great person who doesn't want her dead, right? So she goes into critical care for all of her stab wounds. She's still in there with her parents' funeral. She doesn't get to attend to say goodbye to them. And they have to have police protection for her and her brother because they don't know if Rick's going to come back and try to kill them again.
Horrible.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's a terrifying case, and I just feel like such a scary segment because if you're watching this, it's like, and he's right behind you. And don't go to your car, by the way. Like, don't go outside, and certainly never go on a date with a man, ever.
Of course, that's the best advice.
So I read a little bit more about this case. Yes, he has been captured. He was on the run for 3 years. He is still in jail. So don't worry about that part. He was captured working at a fast food restaurant in Salt Lake City. Oh, I don't know that I ever mentioned... Oh, right. This was in Woodstock. So he had run off to Salt Lake City. He was captured in November of 91. It was just by coincidence that an FBI agent went to this, I think it was a barbecue restaurant, and recognized this guy's face from a wanted poster. For some of his run, he had grown a beard, but by this point he had shaved it and he just had a shorter haircut than he originally did and was going under a false name.
Wow, can you imagine? He just showed up at a barbecue restaurant and was like,
and then was like, that guy looks really familiar, and then realized it was the guy from the wanted poster. and then talked to his supervisor to get his like employment information, and realized
It was the same guy.
that this is not his real name, because he was using the birth certificate or social security number of someone that was 33 years old.
Oh.
And the FBI went, yeah, that guy's not 33.
Yeah.
So, they looked into it, and it was him. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about this case, the Chicago Tribune has an article called "Grisly Tale Unfolds as Church Enters Guilty Plea." He did end up pleading guilty to avoid the death penalty. So he is still in prison and will remain so. There's some conflicting information about this case. I don't want to really get into the super gory details of it. Sometimes articles said he killed people with a hammer. Sometimes people said that he stabbed them with a knife. There's talk of like a nail and a board being used as a weapon on the brother.
Unsolved Mysteries often leaves these details out, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was true, and Unsolved Mysteries was like, we can't say this on television.
It's too gross. I mean, what they showed was terrifying enough. So, yeah, if you would like to know a little bit more information about that, there are some articles about it. I don't know. I just hate this dude, and...
God, I'm glad he's in prison forever, but...
Yeah,
so
the one
horrible.
that talked about the FBI agent is also from the Chicago Tribune. It's Fugitive Church Returns to Face Murder Charges in Woodstock. And I also read an article that I would not recommend, which is from like his family's perspective about... They didn't hear from him for the 3 years they were on the run. And they're like, yeah, like we feel bad for the family, but also we want to know what's up with our son. And I was like, I don't care.
Your son killed someone's entire family. Like,
yeah. And they were like, well, we want to talk to him, and there's two sides to every story, and we hope we can get him acquitted.
acquitted?
Yeah.
Look, I don't know how I would react if I found out my son did a crime like this, so it's hard for me to say that that's the wrong reaction, but...
I mean, you would want to think your parents would support you, but I think if I went and I murdered someone's whole family, my parents would be like, yeah, we're done with you.
I want to hope.
Like, there is never suggested that he did not do this, by the way.
Right, there's no question.
Yeah, he pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. Even when his parents were talking about getting him acquitted, they were talking about like a temporary insanity or diminished capacity defense. Nobody is suggesting that someone else committed this crime. So I'm just glad that he is in prison.
Yeah.
It's really, really awful. It does seem like Colleen was able to move on with her life. At least when he was arrested, she was engaged and was just relieved that he was finally captured, so she didn't have to worry about that anymore. And oh my God, it's I can't imagine watching that and knowing that guy was still out there.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I hate watching. So usually I like to watch some forensic files before bed, and usually that's fine. They're caught. Forensics worked. But every so often it's like, oh, and then it turned out the forensics didn't catch him, and he is still out there. And then I'm like, oh, that person's in my front yard. It doesn't matter like where that crime took place. Like then suddenly it's like, oh wait, actually this is freaky.
Yeah.
They're probably in my closet. I should go check.
All right, we have one more mystery in this episode.
It's so boring.
It's very boring and very short, so I apologize in advance. My coverage of this is probably going to be
I took
pretty
like
bad.
no notes on this, and I was just like, what? Club and drug lords? Who cares?
I do have an MVM from this segment, though.
Great, because I don't.
There's a part at the very beginning where Robert Stack is talking about the sting operation, and he comes out on like the courthouse steps, and there's a cop behind him with this bushy, just like double caterpillar mustache.
Oh, that's what it's called. The double caterpillar.
It's like, because it's bushier than a normal caterpillar. It's like an extra big caterpillar.
It's like two caterpillars mating.
Yeah, and he's just
mating
like,
right on his face.
You can tell he's very proud of this mustache too. His just stance is, I'm just proud owner of this mustache. And he's right behind Robert Stack. So I'll post that on Instagram.
Okay, I missed this somehow.
I don't even know that police officer even had a name in the segment.
He was identified as mustache owner. Owner of the double caterpillar.
Yeah.
Local hero.
Yep. Okay, so this is all about the sting operation to catch these Colombian drug lords. And
it's just a
besides
lot of
that mustache,
reenactments of guys on phones.
I don't even know if I can say anything good about this mystery.
Remember
you get a lot of talk about landline phones if you want some
that,
nostalgia.
Movie Blow with Johnny Depp. What if that didn't have Johnny Depp on it and it just had a bunch of dudes on phones? That's this. What if it was the most boring scenes out of Blow without Johnny Depp? Just some dudes you don't care about.
Selling phones.
Talking on the phone, selling phones. Sometimes 3 guys are on a phone at the same time. Whoa!
Okay, so I did a bad copy and paste job where I cut off part of this guy's name. But I think his name was Julio Cruz.
Sure. Okay.
I'm not really sure. I did such a bad job. I was too busy researching Amelia Earhart. Okay. So he was a Colombian drug runner, and his boss was Jesus Penaver. The two have handled, shipped, and sold over $50 million worth of cocaine.
Okay, well, who cares?
Colombian drug traffickers such as Penaver and Cruz wreaked havoc throughout Colombia during the 1980s. Some of the drug cartels brought cocaine and other drugs to the United States. In order to combat these cartels, the FBI set up a risky sting operation in an electronics store.
I'm just surprised this worked. Because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we're too clueless to pull off stuff like this that people would actually think like, oh, let's use this electronics store for our illegal business.
Yeah. So this isn't even really a mystery. This is just like the FBI had an opportunity to like pat themselves on the back on national TV. So
I'm sure the FBI had gotten some bad press recently, as often happens, and they were like, let's put out a story about how great we are.
That's kind of what this is. So the operation started in May 1987, taking place at, quote, RA Communications in Miami, Florida. This company sold sophisticated telephone systems and electronic devices.
They look real sophisticated.
There's a really funny reenactment. It's funny now, where like a secretary or someone is sitting at a front desk and someone comes in and she's like, yes, sir, we have car phones, we have pagers. What do you need? Like, I got it for you.
Also, there's just a desk and like a white wall. Like, I feel like if you went into an electronics store, there would be electronics. Like, I'm coming in to look at car phones. Show me some fucking car phones. Why is there just her saying, yeah, what can I get you? Pager, beeper. I think that might be the same thing.
This looks like a sting operation.
Yeah. I was like, do you want that Zach Morris phone from Saved by the Bell? We have that. Like, why is there no electronics in this electronics store?
Don't know. So some of the new devices at the time included cellular phones and beepers.
What?
The manager, Jay, and his receptionist,
Samantha,
Sandy.
do you think I could get us beepers and we could just beep each other back and forth? I kind of want to do that.
We'd be so cool.
It'd be like long distance walking.
Like, what is that? Oh, it's my beeper.
What's my beeper?
It's my podcast beeper. It's
just
really important.
Liz saying "you suck" smiley face over and over again.
So the manager, Jay, and his receptionist, Sandy, were both highly trained FBI agents. Soon, drug traffickers came into the store hoping to buy the latest in electronic communication devices. This is so funny because they, like, bait these people with phones.
Yeah,
They're like, you know what Colombian drug cartels need? Phones. And so they just set up a store for phones, and then the Colombian drug cartel just waltzes in.
I don't understand how they knew to go to that store.
I don't know. No, actually, I do know. They don't. The problem is that they don't go into a lot of details in the Unsolved Mysteries segment, but they got informants.
Oh. Okay.
So I think the informants just like went to their drug cartel buddies and said,
like,
hey, we're going to get our phones from this place.
I think I know a great place to buy some untappable phones.
Yeah, and then, so basically the informants went to their buddies and said, hey, I'm working with this electronics guy. He's legit. He's going to sell us some phones that can't be tapped. Like, that's how this went down.
Oh, okay.
But the way they made it sound in the
Is it they were just like wandering around, and then this woman was like, can I get you a pager?
You know what a perfect trap is for Colombian drug cartels? Phones. Like,
I'm just picturing like a kiosk at the mall that sells like phone cases.
Well, if someone was trying to get you in a sting operation, what store would they set up?
Oh my god. Okay.
I feel like for me it would be like a frozen yogurt shop
that also had rare polar waters.
Yes.
And it was and puppies you could pet.
I would be in there in a hot second.
And it was called Samantha's. And it was Just like, come in, pet puppies, eat frozen yogurt, and drink Yeti Mischief Polar Water.
AKA my dream.
It's all you can eat for $5. Yeah.
What would be yours? Cheesies?
Mine would have mini eggs all year round.
Nice.
And yeah, vintage Pyrex. It might just be an estate sale that also had food, actually. And then it was like, and then we're going to go in the basement and talk about Blade Runner. And I'd be like, yeah, this is amazing.
Then you get arrested when you
Yeah,
go
like,
downstairs.
no. It was like the best day of my life. It's like, so here's dead people's shit you can buy for very little money. And here's our French toast waffle bar. And yeah, here's where you get your mini eggs. And if you want to go downstairs and watch 90s cartoons and talk about Blade Runner, right this way. And I'd be like, oh no, I'm arrested.
You're just like skipping through this old house.
Yeah, like tears of joy pouring down my face because I'm so happy. They're like, oh, we have all of these old strawberry shortcake toys and they're only $1 each. And I'm like, what? And then, yeah, I got arrested. I know that I had to take some class when I lived in Las Cruces about like security and stuff, and they said that if they were trying to get someone that skipped out on bail, they always just sent a police officer to the high school football game. And that they would, inevitably show up, or they would find out where they played basketball.
Okay, that seems legit.
Yep.
I guess it's really hard to skip bail these days because it's like there's people that specialize in tracking you down, which there always have been, but they're like really good at it now because you have to there's no way you can not leave an electronic trail.
Right.
So anyway, the Colombian drug lords started pouring into this electronics store. They were interested in several new car phones, ship-to-shore radios, and airplane telecommunication devices. Overall, they wanted untraceable communication. The employees at RA, all FBI agents, claimed that the devices could not be traced or infiltrated by the authorities. Within just 6 months, nearly
that's all that they did.
Within 6 months, nearly all of RA customers were people associated with drug trafficking. Soon, major players of the drug trafficking underworld, such as Jesus Penavalle, I think I said his name right, Penavalle, anyway, began to frequent the store and its clubhouse. Why did this electronics store have a clubhouse?
It's real weird. That doesn't tip them off. That they were like, also, to do your illegal activities, right this way into this room we furnished to your liking.
So he came to trust the FBI agents and freely discussed his drug operations. He even made drug deals while using the company's phone.
They're like, we filled it with white leather couches and mirrored coffee tables covered in cocaine. That's what you like, right? And they were like, wow, let's just spend all our time at the phone store. What? They didn't have their own... What's the point of having a criminal enterprise if you don't even have a cool hangout spot?
No idea. That's a great question. Of course, the calls were both audio and video recorded. Other drug traffickers soon joined in, making drug transactions and deals while at the clubhouse. Cruz also started making drug transactions while he was there. Cruz planned on receiving over 100 kilos of cocaine in early November on a boat called the Tremolo. However, the FBI contacted the Coast Guard, and on November 19th, 1988, the Coast Guard seized over 800 pounds of cocaine. The next day, Cruz showed up at RA Communications along with his bodyguards. Surprisingly, he seemed to know nothing about his boat's capture. Despite having these fancy phones, no one called him and told him.
I don't think this guy was really that great at dealing drugs.
It seems like all of these people were either really complacent from probably never getting caught or, just dumb. So in order to keep his cover, Agent J told him about the Tremelo's capture. Cruz was infuriated but had no idea that J and the other agents were actually responsible. He continued to use the company's phone for his drug business. They let this go on forever. So
yeah, I was like, when are you busting these people?
Don't know. So during the fall of 1988, Penavere began making romantic advances on Sandy.
Of course.
The FBI feared that she and the other agents might be in jeopardy. Therefore, they decided to end the operation. And on December 6, 1988...
Also, they already had boatloads of evidence. Literal boatloads of evidence. They have a whole boat stacked to the gills with cocaine. Why do they
Not
need...
enough.
Why do they need to keep...
Evidence.
I think they just liked the phone store.
Probably they were having fun.
They were like, no, let's just keep hanging out with drug lords at the phone store. And then they were like, ooh, Sandy's going to get kidnapped and murdered. We need to shut this down.
So, in 1988, they brought charges against 93 drug traffickers. The FBI captured the majority of their traffickers, but Penavere and Cruz slipped through, getting arrested. Slipped by, they didn't get arrested, and they vanished. Their whereabouts are unknown. So, like, the two biggest guys never... Okay. So, they were captured later.
These guys aren't good at dealing drugs. The FBI is not good at catching drug dealers. The whole dance goes on and on.
It's like a vaudevillian skit or something. Okay, Cruz was later arrested and sentenced to 17 years in prison for drug trafficking. He has since been released. However, Penavere is still wanted by the authorities. So... that was that mystery. It wasn't a mystery. I guess it was sort of a wanted.
Yeah, but they didn't even really, like, show you that many photos of him or act like you were going to catch him. You know what I mean?
It was just like, look at this cool thing the FBI did, and we're going to talk about phones for 10 minutes.
I do have another Las Cruces story, which was while I was living there. I think the FBI set up a tattoo parlor as part of a sting operation to learn about drug dealing or arms dealing. I can't remember. But it was in the paper because a guy had paid for an entire, like, large tattoo, got in part of that tattoo. The bust happened.
They just shut it down?
They just shut it down because it wasn't really a tattoo parlor. It was part of this sting operation where this, this innocent... bystander who just wanted a tattoo had gone. So he had to, like, sue the government to get his money back for the remainder of his tattoo.
Well, good for him. I'm glad he got his money back.
Yeah, I know. It's just the most, like, New Mexico story. It's like, oh, if only I hadn't gone to the sting operation tattoo parlor.
Hilarious. Do you think the police officers had to learn how to tattoo?
Yeah, that was kind of my question.
They were in there with their little tattoo guns.
I do feel like that city has, like, way more tattoo parlors than the economy can possibly support. So, yeah, how is there going to be another? I don't know.
Huh.
Anyway.
Right, well, should we rate this episode?
I guess.
So, mysteriousness.
I guess the Amelia Earhart story would have been mysterious, but not the way they covered it. My mystery was mysterious and completely terrifying.
It wasn't really mysterious, though. Like, they know who did it.
Yeah, they just didn't know where he was. And if he was right behind you or in your closet or under your bed. And
then this drug cartel thing was just an excuse to talk about the FBI.
I feel like the government probably paid Unsolved Mysteries to do a nice segment on them, which is something they do influence stuff like that. So, yeah, that's my theory.
All right, reenactments?
Mine was completely terrifying. The Amelia Earhart ones were trash, garbage that you wish you could recycle. You, like, get some plastic and you're like, surely I can recycle this. And you flip it over and you can't. That's that. That's... Does that make sense?
Unrecyclable plastic.
Unnecessarily unrecyclable plastic is those Amelia Earhart's.
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
I don't have much to say about the fashion. Do you? I feel like there was some, like, teenage fashion in yours, but it wasn't that remarkable.
No, I was just kind of standard, like, I don't know, a little bean and some stripes or something.
Yeah, so thumbs down on that one, too. I do have an MVM. It's the unnamed cop behind Robert Stack.
The double caterpillar.
The double caterpillar.
Proud owner of a mustache. Robert Stack, I feel like he was barely in this.
Yeah, he kind of showed up in the drug cartel one, but for the most part, it was just old footage of Amelia Earhart and racist depictions of the Japanese.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's that. Thumbs down. Thumbs down all around. On a scale of 1 to 10. It's hard for me
we only go to 5, Samantha. You just added in 5 more Robert Stacks.
I quit.
10 being the most Robert Stacks. No, it's 5 out of 5 Robert Stacks is the best.
I'm done, and I also give this like a 2 Robert Stacks.
Yeah, I was going to say a 1.5.
It's hard for me because I like the Amelia Earhart story, but I don't like how they portrayed it in the show. So just judging off that, I'm like, oh yeah, 2.
I guess a 2. Because I do think my mystery was good. It's just so scary.
Right.
But I mean, I'm glad they covered it. It doesn't seem like that led to his arrest, but I guess I'm glad they tried.
Yeah. It is a good true crime story, but it's also, super scary.
Super
really
scary
tragic.
and violent, and this country's terrible, and Hex the Patriarchy.
Sure. Always do that.
Yeah, every day. Every day that you can. Hex the Patriarchy, good. I think there's lots of examples of why that's necessary in this episode, actually.
Agreed. All right. Hit us with a recommendation.
Oh, so I maybe should have included this as an update, but we did make that gift guide for you. That is up on our website.
Oh, right.
Under recommendations.
All the credit goes to Liz. I slacked off this year and contributed almost nothing.
That doesn't matter.
But they're good gift ideas. So
yes.
If you want to send that to your mom, if you want to send something to your favorite podcast, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that might,
Look,
who that is, I don't know.
What to do. If you want to buy your podcast host a keychain that says "My heart belongs to Satan," I already got Samantha one. Yeah. I really want these goblets that they have at the Madonna Inn in California. That's on the list.
Some cool stuff.
They have a very like Love Witch vibe to them, and I don't need them, but I fucking want them. So that is our own gift guide, my recommendation, sort of. And then a only local, everywhere else recommendation is that the Women's Wood Shop is having a holiday sale on Saturday.
Ooh.
What date is that? December 8th. From 10 to 5. And that's a really cool place. I'll have some stuff for sale there. There's lots of other female and non-binary artisans, and it's just a cool establishment that we support. So if you have a chance,
to go to it because of the snow, I missed the craft fair that Liz was in last night. Very disappointed.
Yeah, it was pleasant, but then as soon as I came back, it's like so much extrovert energy that I was just like ugh.
Collapse in bed. I get it.
Yeah, I didn't even realize because I was at the acupuncture clinic in the morning, and then I did that in the evening, and then I was like, oh, this is why I don't work retail anymore.
Yeah, no kidding.
I can't talk to people all day. It's so tiring. Anyway, yes, Women's Wood Shop, holiday sale. Also, gift guide.
That's a great recommendation.
Done. Wow.
That's also a very seasonal recommendation, which I don't have a seasonal recommendation.
Because who gives a shit about the holidays, really?
True. So I think on this show I have recommended the novels The Expanse, which it's a sci-fi series that's one of my favorites. I'm almost positive I've recommended that before because it's one of my favorite books. If you like sci-fi and you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's very diverse, which is one of my favorite things about it. The plot is great. Everything about it is great, but it also has an extremely diverse cast of characters that are all really well thought out. And that's really rare in the genre of sci-fi and fantasy.
Well, it's kind of rare always.
Well, that's true. So they made a TV show a while back. It was on the Sci-Fi Network. I never started watching it because, one, I didn't have sci-fi, and then when it wound up on Amazon Prime, Sci-Fi canceled it almost immediately. There was a big uproar about Sci-Fi canceling it because it was a really well-produced show. It was really bringing diversity to the genre. They cast it extremely well. I think like George R.R. Martin and a bunch of other like famous authors and movie producers and things came out against Sci-Fi canceling it. Anyway, Amazon picked it up.
Oh.
And is continuing to produce it. They're producing a 4th season. The trailer just came out. So I decided I was going to give it a try because I kind of always wanted to, but I never wanted to get invested in the show if it was just going to end after 3, because there's going to be 10 books. There's like 8 books out. So if it was going to be done after 3 seasons, I didn't want to get invested, but I decided to try it. And I love it. It's just as good as I expected it to be. It's extremely well produced. I always kind of wonder how they'll show things that are in space in a realistic way, because it's kind of like, well, if people are walking around in gravity, like, looks like space, but they do a really, really good job. The special effects are amazing. The cast of characters are perfect. I really enjoy it.
And that's on Amazon now?
It's on Amazon now, and if you have Prime, it's free. So cool. They're producing a 4th season now. I think the 2nd or 3rd book is my favorite, and that's where some of the best characters, in my opinion, are. So I'm looking forward to those seasons of the show, but it's really good. So if you're looking for something to watch, also, I just found out today that Nailed It is coming back for another season. I'm so excited.
It's a Christmas miracle. That's also part of how you lure Samantha into this Frogan yogurt store, is they just show Nailed It.
They say there's new episodes of Nailed It being screened in here, and I sprint inside. I thought it was just going to be 1 episode. I thought it was just going to be a Christmas special, but it's actually going to be 7 episodes, and they might be holiday themed. I'm not really sure, but I can't wait. I think it comes out next week.
Oh.
And I'm sure Netflix is going to drop all of them, so I'll probably binge them in one night.
Lovely. What a great night that will be.
Can't wait.
You can make yourself some hot chocolate. You can get all cozy.
Yeah.
Just not move from the couch.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Oh, also, update. though I was talking about this on Patreon, so sorry if you're not on Patreon. I was talking about how the Satanic Temple was suing Netflix over The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Right.
For a copyrighted statue
Of Baphomet.
that is in the show. Well, Netflix just announced that new episodes are coming in April, so
I guess that's not going to affect.
I guess too bad, Satanists. You didn't win this round.
Did the I still don't understand. Someone needs to tell us. I guess I could Google it myself, but the Satanic Temple didn't invent Baphomet.
I think it's this particular image where like two children are standing looking up at him.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I guess we'll see if the court thinks that they have a valid claim to that or not.
That trademark?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I'm glad it'll be coming back.
Good.
Even though it's very silly.
Sometimes you just have to watch silly things.
It's enjoyable. I like to think I'm a witchy aunt, and that show has two. So
when I told Travis about Nailed It coming back, because he also loves the show, not quite as much as I do, but he loves the show. His response to me was, "Did you email Netflix and ask them to?" Because I emailed Netflix and asked them to bring back more seasons of Canada's Worst Handyman, which is a normal thing to do.
I did not know this about you, and I love it.
Yeah, I'm sure whoever read that email was like, "What? No one watches this fucking show."
You're like, I do.
This one person. So yeah, they haven't responded to me about Canada's Worst Handyman. But I'm not the only one that likes Nailed It. I'm the only one that likes Canada's Worst Handyman, but...
No, you're not. Mac loves it.
Oh, that's right. Wasn't he the one that told me about it?
Yes.
Okay. So me and Mac needs to also write a letter. Maybe we'll get somewhere.
Two people have... You guys, 2 people have written in about this show. I think we need to do something. I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
If you watch Sabrina, I want to know if you think I'm a Zelda or a Hilda.
Okay.
Those are the ants.
Nice.
Which one? Am I the friendly, helpful English aunt? Or am I the cold, aloof, very dedicated to Satan aunt that smokes from like a ring that I want?
I feel like you're the latter.
I think I'm the friendly one that wants to be the bitchy one, but I'd like to hear what other people think.
Okay, let
this
us
is
know.
very important.
Join our Facebook group. Lots
and
of
let
good
me know
discussions
if I'm a
happen there.
Hilda or a Zelda. And how I can make my life more like their life. Also very important.
What were
Dark Lord?
The twins' names in the episode a couple times back?
One of them was Lavelda.
Lavelda.
I think it was Laveda and Lavelda. And I'm still mad my name is not
From
Lavelda.
now on, we will only respond to Aunt Laveda and Aunt Lavelda. So please refer to us as such.
I am technically an aunt, even though I say
too.
aunt. So
I'm an aunt by marriage.
yeah, me too. So there you go.
So yeah,
We are the cool mystery
Hell
ants.
yeah.
Yeah. It's valid. So valid.
So valid.
So, yes.
Is that it?
We're on the
gonna-
social medias. We have a Facebook group.
The Facebook group is really fun. If you want to interact with us directly, that's the place to go. It's just Perhaps It's You. Also, like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
Yep. And you could email us at perhapsitsyou.podcast@gmail.com, or there's a form on our website, perhapsitsyou.com. If you have a paranormal story, or you made out with Robert Stack, or you actually know where Amelia Earhart's bones are,
Send us an email.
yeah, you should let us know for sure. And you should give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts because you know we deserve it. In fact, you should give us a 10 out of 10 Robert Stack review because Samantha forgot what we rate things out of. So now we get 10s. We get all 10s. 10s across the board.
Agreed. You should also consider throwing some money our way via Patreon. You do get some cool bonuses.
Go to that
we're gonna
fountain.
have some new bonuses next year.
Oh, yes, we
So
are.
stay tuned for
the
that.
new year.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/perhapsit'syou.
Go to the fountain, scoop up those coins, deposit them in your bank, and then send us them.
Yeah, don't send us the wet coins.
In a wet envelope. What was that mystery where the guy was just leaving letters at the mall and we were like, that's not how letters work? That's what I'm picturing now, that you're at the mall, you put the change in the envelope, and then you just write Perhaps It's You on it, and you leave it there.
on a banister.
We'll get it somehow. No, that's not how this works.
Yeah, you need to sign up via patreon.com. Use a credit card.
All right. I could use a nap and definitely some snacks, so we're going to go.
All right, bye.
Get out there, solve some mysteries, bitches.
Bye.
Bye.